Welcome back to Creative Culture. My name is Steve, and this is a podcast that explores art and creativity and how it intersects with, culture. It's actually the name of this podcast literally explains that, creative culture. As a reminder, Danie, you consider yourself a pretty cultured person, I would think, right?
I guess that depends on how you define cultured. I would consider myself a pretty creatively cultured person.
Right. I guess that's why I led with the cultured part, because of course you're creative. But...
I guess that's how you define cultured. Are we talking creativity? Are we talking about world culture? Are we talking, it's a broad statement, Steve.
It's an open-ended question for a podcast. As a reminder, if you enjoy this podcast, please be sure to like it and rate it and leave a comment if you're watching on YouTube. And I'm happy to have my friend Danie Berger, one of the most creative people I know, on the show today, and quite cultured.
Thank you.
Danie is the creator of DIY Danie on YouTube, a channel about home renovation, art, construction, woodworking, little gardening, interior design, and decorating, all sprinkled with her own brand of humor and magic.
Thank you.
Is being creative enough to survive in this world of overstimulation on social media? And what happens when your passion becomes your job? I've personally been in a funk with my own life and career lately, but I'm finding that art is helping me find a path. And this is some of what I wanted to talk about with Danie. Danie, welcome back to the show.
Thank you. I'm very excited to be back. It's always a pleasure to talk with you, Steve.
How are those pallets coming, huh?
I'm busting up pallets this week because I wanted to reuse material I already had around my house because the cost of wood is just so crazy now. So it's we all want to reuse stuff, but I've been busting up pallets and it's kicking my butt. Honestly, it's not an easy job to bust those pallets up.
It's not fun. It's
reuse.
not fun at all.
It's not fun, but I think it's going to be worth it. I'm still stubborn enough to believe this is going to be worth it, and it's going to be magical, and it's going to make a magical scenario in my garden somehow.
So it's like a fence. Is it like a short, small fence you're making?
Yeah, imagine a secret garden.
Yeah.
And you're walking up to the secret garden, and it's just the barrier of this secret garden is held by this very rickety, cutesy little fence that is holding nothing but just magical power. That's and cuteness. That's what I'm building. It's serves no purpose other than aesthetic for my magical garden. That's it.
Right.
That's it.
God, I was into that whole pallet thing. It was about 10 years ago. Remember when all of a sudden pallet projects just exploded? Huge. Everybody was doing things with pallets.
And that's when wood was cheap.
Well, yeah, it was actually hard to, at first, it was, you could just, if people wanted you to just take their pallets because they were free. They were like, get rid of them. We don't want these things anymore. But then all of a sudden, it started showing up on Pinterest and everywhere. And then everybody got kind of wise to that. And they started charging for their used pallets.
People were making pallets and then selling them. We were making them. It made no sense.
No. But man, it's so much work to take apart a pallet.
Yeah, a pallet that wasn't pre-made to be the way, it's a bit of a nightmare. But I truly, like I said, I believe that this is the way to go. I am doing the right thing, and I'm reusing material that would have gone to the dump. And I'm a big person behind this idea of using what you got.
Right.
Reuse,
recycle, reuse. Right.
Yeah, I think it's important.
Yeah,
but so let's talk about your creative funk.
Wait, are you interviewing me?
Yes. So this is now my podcast, but no, we're here to talk about creative funks. And, I know that this is something that you've been going through a lot lately. We've talked about this off podcast. So, how are you dealing with your creative funk right now? What's going on with you?
I think there's a big distinction for people to make between kind of going through a creative funk and kind of examining where you are in your career
Yeah.
with burnout, because I think a lot of people want to attribute this to burnout. You hear that on YouTube and other social media a lot. It's like you just go through these periods of burnout. I can't do anymore. But I think that's more
Yeah.
from just exhaustion from kind of doing the same thing over and over, and not having the problem with social media and being a creator for that is that there's no bookends to it. There's no completion date. So it's kind of hard when you're just constantly on this treadmill. And I know that it seems like you just push through all of this stuff just fine. What's the secret here? What am I missing?
I don't think there is a secret. I think I am equally as exhausted all the time. Um, it is challenging, especially now that social media is such a player in TikTok and all these small format spaces that is so digestible. So content is so easy to share, but we're also, as creative people, taking all of that content in and being like, whoa, like the world is full of creativity. And now people have been given this platform to share it in such a wide and massive way. But at the same time, I think creative people do. I think all creative people are slightly emotional people, and we hold our creativity so close to our heart that's like when we see other people really like making beautiful pieces of art, we're constantly in this compare game and being like, well, is my art as good as their art, or what am I making? And I think that starts to create a sense of we start putting a piece of worth on art. And like what kind of worth are we putting out in the world? It is good enough to share. And there's this conversation around creating original work versus authentic work.
Hmm.
And original work is something about you're just making something for the sake of making it and making content for the sake of making it. As creators, we're just trying to bust stuff out every single week. But then there's certain, episodes people will watch and they'll be like, oh my God, I loved this. I loved the way you looked. You had light in your eye. You lit up when you were doing this thing. Like sometimes I call them creative beast projects because they're just these projects that make me feel so fulfilled on the inside, and they challenge me and they make me think outside the box. And I think that that's what we consider authentic work. And it's those pieces, maybe they don't push the dial, but they fulfill you in some big way. So it's like we have to learn to do those kind of projects, maybe weave them into the original work, because if we don't, we're just gonna find there'll be no purpose, and we won't be fulfilled within our art anymore. You know what I mean?
Would you still be fulfilled? Let's take like money off the table as far as
Sure.
needing a paycheck and you're working for a living and this is what you do for a living. But
Yeah.
if money wasn't the case and social media didn't exist, would you still be making the same things you're making right now? Would you be approaching those differently?
I don't think I'd be making as much, like the scale of how many things I do a year. I think I would be more quality versus quantity.
So social media is just pushing you through to just like start cranking this stuff out.
Yeah, and I feel like because it is my job, sometimes I feel this need to just, create that original work versus the authentic work. But I try to inject that authenticity into every week that I do, or every project that I take on every week. But it's tough, Steve. Like some
Right.
days I wonder, I'm like, would I build? I think I would. I think the answer to your question is yes. I think I would be doing all the projects that I'd be doing. I just don't know if I would be doing them as quickly, or maybe I would be more methodical about them. But I also think the chaos is kind of fun.
Yeah.
I kind of like lean into the chaos of creativity. And I think almost it makes my work better because I don't have as much time to say, you know what, I don't like the way this is going, so I'm just going to throw it out and start over or start something new. It forces me to be like, no, I'm going to figure this out. I have my timeline, and I think it's actually maybe made me a better creative person at the end of the day.
I think that's one of the things about you, though, is you just figure shit out. And I think that's one of the charming things about your channel and why people watch it is that you'll take on basically anything that you've never tried before. And
Yeah.
you manage to get through it. And I think that is very inspiring for a lot of people to see that you
Yeah.
just like persevere and you will actually build a patio that didn't exist a week ago. I'm just bringing that up because I know that was kind of a hellish project for you, but you made it through.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, I made it through. And even my husband said, like, I don't think you should do this project. He's like, it's going to be a
Well,
lot of work. And I'm like,
that's the whole
the
point.
the hard work is not the issue.
Yeah.
It's I get excited by when someone tells me you can't do something. I'm so
Hmm.
freaking stubborn that I'm like, you know what? I can do it. And I'm going to show you that I can do it. I might struggle and I'm going to share that struggle. I don't try to like glamorize it, which it's the problem with social media and this short form content. It gets so glamorized. And I do believe it's so wonderful that we are encouraging people to take on their homes, but we got to stop glamorizing it because sometimes it
Hmm.
ain't glamorous and it's hard work. And so I like showing that part of it. But there's
Yeah, I know
always an
that
end result.
like HGTV has gotten into some hot water over some of their shows about like people who have their homes remodeled or something, and they
Yeah.
basically kind of are just putting up a set piece. They like
Yeah.
make it look really good, and then they leave, and they're like, "Well, this was really done like crap."
It's get thrown together so quickly.
Right. And I think that that's probably a lot of what we see on social media is we're only seeing the tip of that iceberg,
Yeah.
not just the tip of everything that all the work that went into something, but we're only seeing those select views that look good. I always
Yeah.
tell people you're going to build a piece of furniture, put the crappy side against the wall. I mean, that's, that's
Right.
just what we do because there's
That's
always
what we
going to
do.
be that one side that you kind of screwed
Yeah.
up on.
Yeah.
But yeah, we definitely have this distorted view of everybody else's work, and thereby sort of our own self-worth by looking at everything through this lens of social media. And I think
Yeah.
it's kind of distorting, again, like you were saying, our authenticity about creating things. So do you
Yeah.
find yourself creating things with social media like in mind, not just in mind, but like high in mind? Like, this is something that I'm going to create because I know this is something people want to watch. And how does that affect your authenticity?
Yeah. I mean, that's a tough question, Steve, because I mean, a lot of the time we want to create authentic work, but we also want to create things that we know people will want to watch. So topical things,
Because it's our job.
because it's our job. And sometimes that's challenging because, say 'tis the season of, it's fall. So we want to do fall related things, but sometimes I don't want to do fall related projects. I just want to do like what's inspiring me in that moment, but that's not trendy. So I think I think there just has to be a balance. I think you just have to find I do try to think about trends. I do think about social media because at the end of the day, like it is my job to do that. But I don't know. I feel a little bit stubborn. I feel like a little bit of a anarchist in the creative space sometimes that I push back on trendy projects and it's in my brand and it's in my DNA to say do the things that fulfill your magic. And I have to listen to that sometimes. I have to remind myself to do that sometimes because if you're not creating things that make you feel fulfilled inside, it just shows on camera. Like you've been saying,
It's true.
you hate how you feel in front of the camera. Sometimes you're making these projects and you don't really feel in it. And there's a
Right.
difference. There's such a difference. Like as an example, I don't know if do you feel comfortable talking about your wood burning, your current
Sure.
art
Yeah.
project?
Nobody
You
listens to
know,
this podcast. So yeah.
no, but I think what I loved about you finding that passion was how much you lit up inside when talking about it. How much, the your voice changes, your eyes change, your face changes when you talk about doing it and how
Yeah.
much it inspires you. And I think that there's this thing about that when you're doing some authentic work, it's so I want to say contagious. It's so contagious and it's so rewarding to be around people who are following that, pursuing that sense of passion because it makes me feel like I want to explore those senses of passion. So that's why I'm like, yes, follow the trends, but also do the things that feel authentic to you. Do that authentic work. And maybe you got to find your way of maybe being trendy, but also doing it your way. Like don't copy the trends. Don't make it you. Like I
Hmm.
don't know. You know what I'm trying to say? Like,
Oh,
make
sure.
it your own.
I mean, we could take it back to the pallets back in, say, 2015 when everybody was doing the pallet projects. And so I thought, well,
Yeah.
yeah, I guess I was jumping on a trend because I had really never done things with pallet wood before.
Yeah.
But I knew it was really popular. But I thought, how do I bring this into kind of my audience and the way I would work with this? And for me, I found that the biggest problem, this is an example of like that I saw with people using the pallet wood, was that they were trying to clean up those boards and making really nice, find the wood in there. And I'm like, that's kind of the wrong way of looking at it. They
Yeah.
look like shit to begin with. You kind of have to embrace that quality and like, okay,
Yeah.
this is going to be a rustic look to whatever you do, and if you can lean into that. And so I ended up finding like the gnarliest boards and like really highlighting those, or like the
Yeah.
splits and things, and just really
What did you make?
playing off of that. All kinds of small things, and little cabinets and
Oh,
decorative
wow.
pieces and like planters and yeah, all kinds of stuff. Boy, it was the thing back back in
It
the
was the
day.
thing, clearly.
It
I
was the it
remember
was
I
the
made an outdoor
epoxy of
couch.
it was the epoxy of 2015.
I love playing with epoxy. I was glad. I'm here for the epoxy trend. I hope epoxy comes back a little bit. I think there's
Oh,
really,
it's
and
still here.
it's
It
a lot of
hasn't gone
fun.
anywhere. I think people are
Yeah.
making smaller projects with it, which I think are really cool. They're not necessarily the big, huge tables. I kind of see as
Yeah.
waning,
Yeah.
but people
It's
are
expensive.
encasing. Super expensive. They're like
Yeah.
crazy,
And there's a
crazy
lot
ass.
of room for fail, which is the
Yeah,
downside to it's expensive, but it can also fail very quickly.
yeah,
So it's like unless you know what you're doing, it can be very yeah, overwhelming to take
yeah.
on as a project. But I think pallets are coming back, and I only say that because I think we're more conscious about what we're spending and what we put into our homes. That pallets are cheap. I
Right.
mean, you can still find people trying to sell them, which I think is
It's weird.
ridiculous. It's
You can still
ridiculous.
find plenty of free pallets, though. People just
Yeah.
need to get rid of them.
Well,
Yeah,
that's what I had. I had pallets sitting at the side of my house for a year.
yeah.
We were going to take them to the garbage. And then I was working on the garden, an episode, and I kind of looked at them and I was like, I think I could reuse these. I asked my audience, everyone's like, yeah, do it, do it. I'm like, yeah, we're all pumping each other up. And I was like, okay. I mean, yesterday I was kind of regretting that pump up.
Yeah.
There was a lot of swear words, but I got through it. I got through it. And today is a much more magical day. Seeing it all come together, it's really fun. It's
So
really fun.
do you find, I guess that kind of to get back to that creative outlet thing, do you find yourself doing anything off camera? I mean, any kind of creative project that is just for you? And I say this as when you bring up my wood burning, because I have it's like I want to call it a secret Instagram, but it's no secret. I mean, somebody could find
Yeah.
it. It's not like it's
Yeah.
privated or something, but and so it's just been something I've been just telling friends and people I meet. And so I really find that very rewarding to kind of work on something and know that I'm making it for the thing itself, that I'm not
Yeah.
trying to think, oh, how am I going to make the reel for it, and how am I going to market this, and how am I
Yeah.
going to, and so is there like anything that you do?
Uh, I mean, I do it less, I would say, but I do love to paint. I paint for myself. I've shared it on YouTube a
Yeah,
few times, test the water a little bit, but I definitely feel like painting is for me. It's something that feels very close to my heart, and I like to keep it there, because you need to have certain things that you keep to yourself because you just don't. I love painting, and I don't want to not love painting. I don't want to not. I don't want to fall out of love with the feeling that it gives me when I paint something that I'm
right,
really passionate
right.
about or really proud of,
Hmm.
and I'm worried that when you put things out into the world, when you share them on social media, innately you're asking for people's opinions.
You're
And I
asking for
don't,
criticism, yeah, good and bad.
yeah, and I don't want people's opinions on my art. My art's for me,
Right.
And
Yeah,
I
that's just
love
it.
showing people my art. If someone comes over, I'm like, yeah, pull out my sketchbook and show people
Right.
it. But it's like a very different thing than
Yeah.
sharing it online. So I like to keep my art close to my chest a little bit,
Yeah.
you know?
I think that's where I am. I think about this a lot. At what point do I want to kind of open this up or share what I'm doing? But
Yeah.
I don't know. It's very nice. Not because I know if I did that, as soon as I did that and went to a larger audience, there's going to be like, inevitably those comments like, you don't know shit about woodworking. This is the ugliest thing I've ever seen. Those kind of comments. And it's not what I want my head, where want my
Especially
headspace
when you're
to be
starting
right
out.
now. Yeah,
Yeah.
and so I'm just enjoying this, and it's really nice to have this positive feedback from the people who
Yeah.
actually are following it and enjoying it. So to me, this has been a good release. I think I
Very
mentioned
cathartic.
Oh, very much so. And I think I mentioned to you at the beginning of the year, that was one of my intentions for the year was to, this is kind of funny,
Yeah.
I wanted to make art one day a week was the thing. I was going to set aside one day a week. I wasn't sure
Right.
what day of the week that was going to be. And I thought this would be fun. And I tried a few different things. But now the problem I'm running into is that this is like, now I need to probably find one day a week to do my actual job.
Because you're so passionate about it. But that's what I love.
I
I think
know.
that's so magical.
Yeah, it
It's
is.
it's really inspiring to be a part of that journey, being a friend of yours and getting to see that side of you, I think is really, it's been really, I don't know, in a way, it's like how it's been cathartic for you, it feels cathartic for me to see it as well. Like as a creative person, it almost inspires me in that contagious feeling that I think that we all have to be curious about creativity, and that curiosity is contagious. And
Yeah.
it makes you want to do and try more things. Like I tell my audience, and I'm very open, that when I start the year, I like to try and learn one new thing in the creative space every year. Try something new. So like a few years back, I wanted to learn how to weld, and I did that year, and I love it. Oh my God, do I love it? That sets my soul on fire. And then this year, I said I really wanted to learn how to work with ceramics, so pottery and like making things with my hands. And so I did that. Like my husband and I pulled my husband into it. I was like, we're going to do this class of a pottery class, and you're going to come with me. And he was like, okay.
There was
But
no
it was so
question
annoying
involved.
because he was actually better than me. I was like, ugh. But we just did it. I didn't share it. I
Oh, really?
shared
This
little
was nothing you
snippets.
shared. Hmm.
No, it wasn't. I didn't make an episode about it. I talked about the fact that I was doing this. And I said maybe one day I'll share it. But like the going and doing those classes was solely for me. And
Hmm.
that really helps get, I don't know, it grounds my creativity in a sense, because I think it gets a little wild when you're sharing everything online, and there's like a grounding sense to it when you're doing something for yourself. And it really, it's a magical feeling, truly. And I love the pieces that I made. And I can't wait to do it again. And then I started stained glassing this year. I just decided I was going to do stained glassing. And I'm like,
Hell yeah.
it's just, why not? I just love learning new things. I love
Yeah.
learning new techniques and skills. And I think it's fun because I did have to learn stained glassing on camera. I did a project for somebody, and then I was like, okay, I got to learn how to stain glass if I want to do this vision. I have this vision for this thing, and it's not going to be great unless I learn how to do this. So I got really lucky that I have a bunch of creative people that are on my Patreon that I talk to on a
Yeah.
daily basis, and someone is I don't know what to call a pro glass a glass artist.
Yeah.
She's a glass artist. And so I asked if she could give me like a little 101 class. And I paid her for her time. And yeah, like it was so magical. And it
That's
was like,
fantastic.
I can't wait to make more,
I
maybe
feel like
for
that's
myself.
I feel like that's the way you kind of enter into like so many of your projects is that you have a vision for one part of it, and you're like,
Yeah.
well, if I want this whole, I don't know. I'm just gonna say like I need this door installed, but I want the stained glass in there. How am I going to do that? And you sort
Yeah.
of work back that way and figuring out the solution to that. And I think that's got to be very satisfying.
Oh, it's the best. It's the best to like have a problem and solve it through creativity.
Right.
It's the best feeling,
Yeah.
It's like, for instance, you had a problem where you're like, oh, my hose is out. Oh, and
What?
it's always out. It's such an eyesore.
Oh, my garden hose.
Sorry, yeah. Your hose is out. You had a garden hose that was always out,
Uh-huh.
and you're like, I need to solve this
Right.
problem. I'm gonna make a garden hose box. And you did. You
Yeah.
solved your problem with creativity. Boom,
Right.
solved.
But see, this is the thing. This is okay. So this is my job is to do that kind of video. And I
Right.
think, okay, And all of my projects, it's all geared towards beginning woodworking. So I'm not going to do any high-end fancy stuff. I'm going to keep it simple that anybody can do this. But that's the kind of project that it's useful, and I think it looks cool and it works out great. But it's like kind of YouTube death because it's nothing exciting.
Would you have made that if not for YouTube?
Oh yeah, because I needed the thing.
Well, there you go.
That's what I mean. But it conflicts with like, well, I have a job to do. And I mean, there was a time when every project I made was very much kind of determined on like what kind of potential numbers this could receive on YouTube. And now I keep telling myself I don't care anymore. I don't care about those analytics, but you kind of do.
Yeah.
Because it's like a reflection on my own like self-worth or something. You know, you get that 10 out of 10 and you're like, well, shit, I put in a lot of work on this thing.
Yeah. I kind of wish we could change the conversation around what it means to have self-worth. You know, like I wish that self-worth could not be a number. It could just be a feeling. Self-worth could just be what you gained from that project. As an example, I learned how to stain glass and like it wasn't perfect, but I gained the knowledge of how to, you know, further myself in a creative medium. And that self-worth right there was magical enough. You know, if it didn't have to have a number associated with it. I think it's a brain trigger though. It's like it's work to not create a number worth around art.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Well, I think my Halloween videos are a good example of that. They are always the least viewed videos on my channel. I mean, hardly anybody watches these things, but these are the videos that I'm almost like I'm most proud of. I mean, I love making these things. So there's definitely a difference between, you can't just say, and this is the whole Mr. Beastification of art, is that, you know, we apply the label good to something just based on its numbers. Like, well, that was a good video. It got 100,000 views, when it's like, well, you're bastardizing the use of that word good in that sense.
You know what, though? I was just thinking about this. I mean, I have a lot of feelings about TikTok. But I have to say, like, I think a lot of my feelings towards TikTok is so positive, and here's why. Although it's not a platform that I feel very connected to, I love YouTube. It's like my safe space. It's my love. But the thing I appreciate about TikTok is that it's given a place for people to share their authentic selves without the worry about worth behind it. You know, like I follow people who all they do is take thrifted items and like turn them into weird little play sets, like, you know, like horror scenes or like an octopus coming out of a thing, like, you know, and I follow somebody who creates actually another octopus scenario, like these little pottery octopus things. And, you know, if you put that on YouTube and added worth like a number system, maybe it wouldn't do as well, but it gets such great views because it finds this niche audience. And I think that's so wonderful that people can share that passion and that worth in a place that gets so celebrated, you know?
Right.
I don't know. I think each platform is so different in terms of how you look at that worth of what does well. I mean, what's like the best TikTok video? It's like a strawberries on the top of a pancake or something for a while.
I have no idea. It's like
it doesn't make any sense. So I think we have to reframe the conversation about how we feel about what creates worth in our minds to our art.
I think that a lot of the reasons why I think you're successful on YouTube, well, actually all platforms, is because you approach your creativity with such a positive attitude. And I think, like you were saying earlier, that's very infectious. That kind of thing. Yeah. You cannot fake that. You can't. You watch a video and see when somebody's just kind of phoning it in. Yeah. Maybe that's why my videos are getting lower numbers these days.
I told you.
I shouldn't say that. I don't phone them in. When I'm actually making the video, I'm in the zone. I'm like, hey, this is cool. This is what I enjoy doing.
Yeah. I just think, you just got to make things that you feel passionate about, you know?
Yeah. I guess
it kind of comes through.
Yeah, I mean, it begs that question. It's like, oh, basically, this is like a huge question. It's like, oh, what's the point of creating art? Why are we doing this thing? Because there's a lot of people. I mean, everybody listening to this podcast and everybody posting on YouTube, obviously, they're kind of in that creative space. But you got to figure there's a lot of people who are just watching, and I kind of wonder sometimes. It's like, what is that like to live a life where you don't have art?
Yeah.
I know, in your life. I mean, you see it. Maybe you go to a hotel and you see hotel room art or something, but you don't even consider it. And there's plenty of people like that, and they live perfectly fulfilled lives.
Yeah.
I don't
Well,
know.
okay. There's this quote that actually Liz Gilbert, it sticks in my head all the time, and she's the writer of Big Magic, which I'm really glad that you started reading that book. It's
Oh yeah, I
my
finished it. It was a great book. It really did.
this wasn't in the book, but I remember she was on a podcast once and she was talking about this, that, there are people in the world that will say, oh man, I don't have a creative bone in my body.
Yeah.
And, she was saying how much she hates that statement. And I agree, like I'm behind the hate for that statement, because if you change the word creative and exchanged it for curious,
Right.
doesn't it sound stupid to say, "Oh, I don't have a curious bone in my body"?
Yeah, that's so
Like
true.
what to say for people? I think everybody is creative in their own way, and I think that although maybe it doesn't show in art on your wall or the
Hmm.
DIY projects that you're making, maybe it's in the way that you cook or the way that you're chopping or the way that, you organize your books that make you feel fulfilled. Maybe you're a book person and you just love the way that it looks on a shelf. Like that's all creative. That's all art in
And
its
you
own
think that that
way.
is synonymous with,
Good word.
um,
Sorry.
well,
I just like the word.
but you think
Synonymous.
it's synonymous with curiosity, creativity?
Yes. Yes, I think it's one and the same. I think
Hmm.
I consider myself, and this was like the whole curiosity was definitely something that I developed into my own language based on reading Big Magic, because it just felt so right. Because I didn't want, I was so tired of defining what creativity was or what my creativity was. And I'm like, I'm just, I'm just a curious person. And if that means like it's just, you're cutting flowers or the way I organize dishes, in a fulfilling way, or, organize your art room, I think the curiosity, it's all creative. I don't
Hmm.
know. I just don't think you can give a title or a statement to what creativity is.
So
It's
then
just you're a
everything,
curious person.
if everybody is curious, and I think everybody is curious about something. It could be curious about numbers. Maybe you're an accountant and you're just curious how things
Absolutely.
work.
But isn't
So
there
all of
art in
these,
numbers?
well, this is what I'm getting at, is that, okay, so if everybody's curious, everybody is creative, is everybody making art? And if everybody's doing something, what is the point of it? Is it just a point just individually? This is just a thing that makes me happy? Is it just
Yeah.
about
Y-
happiness?
yes. I think that we live such a short time on this world, like on this planet, sorry, I should say. We live such a short
They're
life.
synonymous,
Yeah. And like, why do you
world
want
and planet.
the word synonymous? I'm going to put that one in my dictionary today. I'm going to try to use that word in this.
I'm sorry, I totally derailed your
No,
thought.
no, it's okay. I just think that, um, where was I going with that? Now you really
See,
derailed me.
this is why I need to take an improv class, so I would say yes and rather than just like totally jumping in. I need to learn how to interview people.
No, 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 you're fine. No, we have a limited time, as humans. And so don't you feel like maybe this isn't even correlated, but like, don't you feel like it's better to let somebody live their life in the creative way that fulfills them? Like
Hmm.
do the things that make you feel passionate, do the things that are, don't spend your time doing things you don't want to do. You spend your
Right.
time doing the things that make you feel, set your soul on fire, that make you feel creative and do that. I just,
Well,
it,
it's easy to fall into the trap too, and well, it's not really a trap. I mean, it's a necessity. And I often try to temper my whining about my job with the fact that there's people who have to actually work for a living, and
but
it's
you're
hard. It's
working for a living. You are
but
working.
but it's like, I mean, there's people who have to do like real manual labor and like hard jobs, and it's like, oh, I have to shoot a video and it's so stressful for me to do that, and oh, I have to put up with some comments,
I
and
think you're downgrading how much work it is to be a content creator, though. I think you're putting aside the fact that it takes a lot of work to come up with the idea, to put yourself on camera, be charismatic on camera. I mean, a lot of people always say to me like, "Oh, I'll put up a camera and it's so hard." All of a sudden, their whole demeanor changes. They forget how to talk.
yeah, I think
It's
a lot of
not
people, they drop
easy.
down 10% of their personality when you have to actually bump it up about 10% on
Oh
camera.
yeah, like the rule of thumb is, when you're on camera, what you have to give like an energy level of 8, but that reads as a 5. So it's
Yeah.
like you always have to overexert yourself. But like I think that no, the answer is no to you, because I think people take for granted how much work it actually is to film your day to day, how much energy you use. It is a real job. Your job is for entertainment and learning, and don't discount that. I think.
Yeah, I guess I'm not discounting that, I guess I guess part of the larger picture is that then everybody's job, though. Well, this it actually kind of gets back to, if you start with something that's your passion and then it becomes your job, because I think a lot of people probably don't do that, or they don't have the opportunity to do that. A guy who's getting a job working in a coal mine, I doubt as a child, that was his passion. I could be wrong, and I could be just totally dissing coal miners here, but it's like something they kind of fell into, and they're like, okay, this is, I got to provide for my family and everything. And to me, that's a different thing. So they're not having to reconcile passion and career in a way that I think, and maybe this is part of what I'm experiencing, is that reconciliation hitting me.
Well,
It's
it
like,
comes full circle of worth. You don't
yeah,
feel like what you're creating is worthy of people's time and energy. And I think that's the question that needs to be reframed, because the worth that you create is you're sharing your passion, you're helping that contagious feeling, you're helping people build better lives around themselves. They might watch your video and be feeling really crappy one day, and just watching your video changed their entire day. And that is a powerful thing that we have to like not take for granted, that you're watching a video. Like, I can't imagine the amount of times that sometimes I get from people who say, I was just having the worst day, and then I
yeah,
watched your
yeah.
video, and
I get it.
I feel good. I felt good, and I felt creatively inspired to go tackle something around my home, which I haven't felt like doing in weeks. Like, those kind of things are the reason why I know that my channel and my art and the videos that I'm making has worth,
Right.
because
Yeah,
that's
I
my,
totally get that, and I understand that, because I get that exact same thing, and I have,
yeah,
over the past few years, this has been a kind of a big theme in my life, is understanding where my place is
yeah,
in this maker community, in the YouTube community, and in all of these places. And I see that when see those comments, and then when I meet people who have said, man,
yeah.
I've been watching your videos for years, and I've had people like in tears. It's just like the craziest thing. I would never have expected any of that. And so it's only in the last few years that I've started to put that into perspective. But it's also in the last few years that, maybe it's because I'm so worried about, like, I've got to, now those people, they kind of,
Rely on it.
yeah, they, not necessarily rely, but I'm like an important part of their life experience. And
Sure.
so I feel like I have to do that. And so I have to fulfill that role, at the same time trying to fulfill
That's a lot
my,
of pressure, Steve.
it is, and at the same time trying to fulfill my own creative passions, and all of this stuff. But I don't even know if I'm making, if there's a point to what I'm saying here.
No, there is a point. The point is that it's hard. There's a sense of guilt that comes along with
Right.
when you're not creating the
Right.
work that
Right.
people enjoy so much.
Yeah.
But I also think that you're human. Creativity is such a personal thing. It is a personal experience. And I think that, and I have to remind myself this every single day too. Like, I'm with you. I have all those same emotions, but the only thing that grounds me is reminding myself that, if if I'm not bringing my most authentic self to these videos and to what I'm sharing, then why share it at all? Because those
Hmm.
people want you to show up. They show up because they like you. They love your art. They love your personality and what you bring to the table. And they want you to bring that. That's what fills them with joy. That's what, that's why they want to watch your content. And don't, I think if we put this onus on that, well, the pressure, I guess, that, oh, well, if we don't make this video, we're not going to make their day on, when we upload. I think that's something we just can't do. We have to
Yeah.
remind ourselves that we're here because people like to follow us. And if that means that, this week that I'm just cleaning my studio space because I need to share that declutter because, the authentic thing is that I'm not in my best mind and I need to clean this, this space because if I don't clean it, I'm not going to feel creatively fulfilled this week. And you share that with your audience and they're like, yeah, thank you for being honest. Thank you for sharing that. I think that's powerful. I think being honest is powerful.
Do you think that just being like a creative person is enough to survive, especially if you kind of want to get that work out there? Because it is defeating if you're just starting. I can imagine like this Instagram I have, how many people have actually followed it organically. It's like 5 people or
Yeah.
something have found this channel. I mean, this just doesn't. So if I was like, this is what I want to do, and then nobody, it's like crickets. I mean, all of the followers are just people I know. So
Yeah.
I know that it would be kind of deflating to just know that you're putting in all of this work. And then I think, well, what is the art you're making? And I've had this discussion with a lot of people before. Is the art you're making the painting, the thing that you're showing, or does the art become that Instagram reel, which is really the more important art that people are watching?
Right.
Because
You spend more
and
time making the reel than the actual physical piece of art.
right. I mean, I'm sure you've had these comments before. People say, "I just like to watch you. I don't. It doesn't
Yeah.
matter what you're making. I'll never make any of this stuff or
Yeah.
anything." And so, and I guess that's kind of why I started this whole other thing, is just so I could just make the art and have it be the thing. But I find myself doing the same thing. I'm making the reels again, and now I'm starting to
Yeah. You're
tell a
putting a lot up.
narrative. But because it's this like thing about you
Well,
get
you're a
into this.
storyteller.
Yeah, and you also get into this mindset of like everything is potential content.
Yeah. That's the
If,
hard one to
oh,
get
if I
it your,
don't
out
shoot
of.
it, I'll regret it.
Yeah. Oh, it's so tough sometimes. I actually stop myself from doing things like that, especially when I'm painting or like, oh, it's just like because it sits at the back of your mind, right? You're like, oh,
Yeah.
I gotta film this. And sometimes I film it for myself. Sometimes I just film it and I just keep it. And maybe like a year from now, I'll like see it and I'll be like, okay, maybe I feel comfortable sharing it now. But like, that's such a hard thing as a content creator. But I think to go back to your statement about like, is it going to
Which
be
is
like
the art.
which is art and why you're sharing it. I think it's hard for people who come into the social media space because they just want to be a influencer. I'm using quotations for
Mm-hmm.
people listening because I really dislike that term.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
I think if their goal is like, I hear kids being all the time like, I just want to be an influencer and stuff. And I'm like, okay, like some people can, like, there are those people online, but the creativity for people who are creative and like they're putting their art, I think you have to have a different purpose around that of why you're sharing it. Share it because you want to inspire people. Share it because you want to move people. And hey, only 5 people like your wood burning art online. Well, that's 5 people that you inspired that day, and
Yeah.
that's a hell of a lot more than 0. And that's
Yeah,
pretty
that's a good.
magical.
That's a good way of looking at it. And yeah,
You
the
know,
term influencer, that started out as like it's like marketing thing. It was like the
it is a marketing thing.
sponsors, because what you're doing is you're influencing these
People.
people to buy something from these people. You're
Yeah.
just the middleman. Is
Well, I want to be a
you are.
creative influencer. I want to influence people to be creative. So
Yeah, I can see that.
I don't want to sell people things. I want to sell people on authentic
But like
creativity.
here's an example of this guy, and this came through my Instagram feed because I get all this art stuff. But
Sure.
there's this guy who like suspends himself from this trapeze or rope or something on his legs with these two huge like 5-gallon buckets of paint, and he swings and the
I've
paint goes
seen those.
all
It's
over the
so
huge
magical.
canvas and everything. And I'm
Yeah.
thinking it's really cool, but the art is that. The art
Yeah.
isn't the canvas that has
the
the
process.
paint on it. Right, because if he had just done a square Instagram photo and put it up there of that,
Yep.
it's not.
It wouldn't have had the same reaction.
It's not a thing. And I think this is what, I don't know, I guess it's just sad that that's sort of like, in order to make art, you have to make it for social media.
Well, I think
You
people
have to make it fit
crave
that.
story, though, right, Steve? Like it's the same
No,
way that
I
you
mean, I
make
like
stories
it.
behind it.
I love watching those things. It's cool to watch it. I'm just kind of questioning what's more important to people, which type of art, the finished, completed project, or the process of them making the art.
I think a little column A, column B, but I think that the power of storytelling is far more powerful than a still image. And you could tell a whole story in a still image. That's why art exists. You know, you look at an image and all of a sudden you're like captivated by this story. But I think that the art of storytelling, especially through video, and maybe I'm just biased because I love the art of storytelling through video. It's why I got into it. But I think there's something that you connect with so much more on a deeper level when you
Right.
see the process of somebody doing something, like watching
Hmm.
you actually do the physical wood burning. I think there's just something so, it makes me feel more connected to the art piece, that
Yeah.
feels more connected to the process and watching that end result. You know, I think there's something very powerful to that, and
I
sharing the
agree.
mistakes and the oopsies.
Yeah, I totally agree. But I think that also it kind of that becomes more important, and so we start to look for those things that people are responding to, and start to just
Right.
do more of that rather than. I mean, nobody. Well, I mean, they are, but nobody really is interested in a reel by Michelangelo making David, because we know we've just seen it. We know
Yeah.
this is the thing, is the
Yeah.
finished thing.
But I think
But
it would be cool to see him. What room is he painting in? How is he painting it? Does he have a little light over top of him? Is he just like how does he, mix his paints? Because as a creative person, I love to see the process, and I think most creative people feel that way.
yeah.
So I'm like, I want to know what environment, what was he listening to? What inspired that piece in
So
his
he would totally be
surroundings?
making TikToks today.
Absolutely, because I think everything is
I
the
think you're right.
story.
I think you're
You
right.
know, even we told stories through photos before Instagram had video and TikTok, and like
Yeah.
we told, when we did the, what is it, the carousels, so we'd show, like, people would show process and stuff, and that would do far better than
Hmm.
than just a single photo.
See, there we go. Do better.
What do you mean do better?
Well, you just said it. It would do better. It would get more views.
Well, yes, it would perform better because
Right.
people love that process,
Right.
than just throwing up a photo. But I think it's just the art of storytelling. I think people
Yeah.
feel
I
a
guess
sense of connection to it.
it's just the platform. It's just the way it is, right? Social media is almost like all across the board. That is the platform, is social
Yeah.
media. There's really no difference between Instagram, YouTube, TikTok, whatever. I mean, they have their differences, but it's still
Yeah.
storytelling based.
But say you're a business owner, right? Okay, say you're
Hmm.
a business owner and your business is about paper. I don't know, you make paper, you make special paper. It's not, riveting to anybody. You're making plain white paper, right?
Hmm.
And you're thinking, this is my business. I sell paper. I don't know how to have a social media around that or whatever. But then all of a sudden on your social media, you start telling the process of how your product is made,
Right.
and so you don't have to be I put in quotations, a creative person, to just tell these stories. I think, like, there's ways for people to succeed in today's day and age. I think you have to evolve. I think it's evolution, regardless of
Right.
being a stubborn creator like we do. I know we like go, "Rah, we don't want to make anything, and I hate showing the process." But I think we are in an evolution today. It's the same way when DVDs went, or VHS went to DVD, and everyone was like, I hate this. I like my tapes. And then all of a sudden everyone was doing DVDs. And then all of a sudden it's just like, it's as much as technology is evolving, how we share the world is evolving. And I think we just have to embrace it a little bit and I mean, I tell myself this every single day. We just have to be less rigid around embracing today
Right.
and how we share.
Was there ever a time before social media where this type of outside force affected the art you were making?
Sorry, can you say that again?
So was there a time before social media, was there any kind of outside force this large that was affecting the way you made your art? Or not you in particular, but people made art? Because I think this is fundamentally what I'm trying to wrestle with, is that social media is fundamentally changing how we approach art. And I know it's good we embrace the technology and we're all part of that. But I don't think that in, say, 1945, somebody making a painting was concerned in that way. They were more concerned with maybe their patrons, like Patreon, I think, is a great model for artwork, or they were concerned with selling at an art gallery or getting in a museum or these kinds of things. It wasn't, they weren't affected by this type of outside force.
Do you think it is changing though, or is it just making it more accessible?
Well, I think it can be more accessible, but only if you play that game. You can make the most, and I tell people this on YouTube. I've been doing YouTube for 80 years now, and it's like, you didn't
80
know YouTube
billion
was
years.
around that long. But I always tell, because people will ask me, how do you get started on a YouTube channel or whatever? And I always say, well, there's like guys making woodworking who are so good. They are so good, but they try to make YouTube videos and they suck because because that's a different thing. So it's not really about their project or their woodworking skills. Most of the most skilled people, probably in any media, are most likely not posting on YouTube.
Yeah. But those people are still having like art shows or,
I
galleries
they do.
and bringing people together, So I think that there's a lot that hasn't changed. We've just included certain aspects of how people can find art. I mean, think about music, how easy it is to find music, but also how hard it is to find music nowadays.
Because everybody's making music.
Because everybody's making music.
There's no entry to distribution. It's instantly on Spotify, YouTube, wherever you want.
But at the same time, there's a million artists that I listen to now that I never in a million years would have found if not for social media.
Spotify, whatever, yeah.
So it's kind of like, I think it's changing, but I think it's maybe, I'm going to choose to be positive about this. I think it's changing for the better. And I think it's just, some people might not use it. Some people might, fight against the social media, but I think
I
maybe
tend to
we
agree
need to
with
use it
you.
for positivity.
I do tend to agree with you. I think I think ultimately social media is a positive thing. I'm not like, there's kind of like this brand of younger people right now. There's like Zoomers who are like really anti-social media, and they're like, because they kind of grew up with it, and now they're like kind of, we don't want to have any part of it. But I think that you're right. There is a kind of a good balance there. I mean, I'm on social media all the time, but I tend to really curate like my feed and who I'm following and what I watch and everything. And maybe this is why I'm not so into TikTok, because it's just that endless scrolling kind of.
It's so endless.
It bothers me.
Yeah, and I think that there is the need for people who are maybe in the creative space doing curiously creative things to step away from it, because I think it does affect authenticity sometimes, because you stop realizing it. Because as an example, I did this wonderful piece for somebody a week ago, and I was really proud of it. I showed it to her. She loved it. And then I get on Pinterest.
The dresser?
Yeah, the dresser. And it had this beautiful stencil art and all of these things. And I was really happy with it. And then like a week later, I get on Pinterest and I'm, weeding through Pinterest, and all of a sudden it was like, I was seeing all these other people's work of like stenciling, and I was like, oh man, this is so much better. Oh man, why didn't I do this? Oh man. And I was like, close it down, Danie. Close it down. Stop comparing yourself. Stop doing that. Let it inspire you. Like, you have to, oh my God, we have to train our brains. We were not ready for social media. It happened so fast.
Yeah.
We were not ready for it. As a creative person, I was not ready for it, and I just like
It's a good point.
constantly have to reframe the messaging that goes into this noggin that your creative worth is just as valuable as somebody else's out there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And it's not better, it's not worse, sorry, but it's authentic and it's yours. And only you can bring that work and only you can bring that to the table. And that's good.
Yeah.
As soon as I stopped caring about schedule when it
Mm-hmm.
comes to social media, I think I got a lot better around it. When I stopped caring, I'm like, oh, it's Monday, I got to get something out, or oh, I haven't posted in like 5 days.
Yeah.
Oh my God, it's so exhausting to me. That's what ruins me. I'm like,
Yeah.
oh, I got to get something out and make some stupid reel because,
Well,
because the
this is,
algorithm
because
tells you to.
I've worried about you sometimes because I've talked to you and you're like, oh yeah, I'm basically working 7 days a week.
Yeah, I know. I do love it though. That's why. But yeah, I'm working 7 days a week because I'm by myself trying to
Well,
run
that's
an
another
entire
thing. Yeah.
YouTube channel. Then there's
Working
10
alone.
platforms.
Yeah, we've had that conversation too about working alone and how isolating it is. But you're trying to find a helper, an assistant, or something to work with you,
Yeah.
aren't you?
Yeah, it's something I need to integrate into my daily workflow, I guess. Um, it's just so hard. Like it's, to keep up to the amount of things that keep coming on. It's like, okay, Instagram was one thing before. Before we could just upload YouTube videos and then maybe put a photo on Instagram being like, go watch my
Right.
YouTube video. But now it's like, oh, well, now we got YouTube videos and then we got to create a short for in 1 minute for YouTube shorts. Again, if you're not putting out shorts, then what are you doing? Like this is, and then all of a sudden you got to do an Instagram video, but then maybe an Instagram post and remind people of that thing. And then you got to
Right.
do a story. Oh, don't forget about adding the story. And then you got to put it on Facebook. Then you got to put it on Pinterest. Then you got to put it on TikTok. I'm exhausted just saying that out loud. Like
And you
it's
have to do that
so
all
much.
alone.
Yes. And
Yeah.
so it's exhausting, but that's why you just have to love what you do, love sharing what you do. Because if you don't love it, when you stop having fun, then that's when
So when you say when you
it,
love what you do, so do you put equal value on the project you're making, loving that process of making a fence out of pallet wood or whatever, as much as the process of not just shooting the video, but shooting all of these videos and the posts and all of this stuff?
yeah,
They're equal.
100%. I
And
feel
it's
it
all the
has to
same.
be. I feel it has to be, or you're gonna resent your job.
One part of it. And I think that's why so many people just offload so much of that other type of posting schedule stuff.
Yeah, I think we just have to get rid of this rigid posting schedule and just, man, I would so prefer people to just share what's authentic versus share things for the sake of sharing things.
Hmm.
It would be so
Right.
much more powerful. I think the world would be a much, the
So what's
content would be less garbage.
well, you keep saying authentic, and I use that word a lot too. What does that actually mean to you? How do you express that authenticity in front of a camera?
I think that authenticity means it's not polished. It's not it's not perfect. It's something completely from your soul, from your heart, like as a creative person. Like it's not finessed. Authenticity is just exactly what you do that day, exactly how it comes out. That's what you're showing. That's the truth. There's no polishing around it. I think people are so tired of seeing that polished version of the world. We're comparing ourselves to a very pretty space that isn't so pretty. Creativity is not meant to be
It's
pretty. It's
swinging back, I
messy.
think. I think it's swinging back to a more authentic
I hope
space.
so. I hope
Yeah.
so. It makes me happier to know
Hmm.
because, or I'm hopeful for that because, and it's okay to have a little column A, a little column B, but I think that the word authenticity is just about being true to yourself. Don't be true to other people about what you think that they want you to be. Like we gotta stop that. So if you're not in a good mood that day, I normally will say on camera, like, guys, I'm not in a good mood. I just like, it's like this is hard. Or if I'm freaking dying outside of heat and I'm like having a panic attack, I will show that. Like I think it's so important. I love that you show the mistakes. I love when, who's these are get wrapped up in like, oh well, you're supposed to be perfect because you're Steve
Hmm.
Ramsey, you know how to woodwork, and like you f up too sometimes, and you show that, and I really appreciate that you do. It makes me feel better as a person, when I f up too. I'm like, oh well, Steve f's up. I'm okay to f up too.
I actually fuck up, but we can F
I'm
up too.
sorry. I'm a PG person when I'm on camera. I like swear like a I swear so
I know
hard
you do. That's
outside of
what's funny
world.
is hearing you like this because I
I
in
know.
the on and I'm the same way on my videos. It's been like G rated
Yeah.
ever
Well,
since I
children
started.
watch my content and I
Yeah,
know they do. So
yeah.
I try to keep it PG.
It
So I'm
just
like,
makes things so much easier. You don't have anybody complaining or for whatever reason
yeah.
and everything. Yeah. I do wish YouTube. I think that one of the great tagline early on was broadcast yourself. That was right there on their
Mm.
homepage, and I kind of miss when they dropped that tagline because that sort of like symbolized that loss of authenticity because that was the original YouTube was everybody could just grab whatever. It was even before phones, really.
Mm.
Cameras. People had little cameras, whatever they could shoot on, and were just literally broadcasting themselves. And there was a certain authenticity to that kind of got lost in as YouTube matured. But I do, to get back to that, I do think that it is kind of the pendulum is swinging back. I am seeing much more authentic channels, and I got to hand it to YouTube also. And I don't know if you've noticed this or not, that YouTube is starting to recommend smaller channels. I'm getting like these videos in my
Yeah.
feed that have like
Yeah.
40 views on them or something. I'm like, this is
Yeah.
cool. This is what I want to see. I don't need to see all these huge channels.
I agree. I like the smaller channels. I love
And
finding
because
small.
have that authenticity in a
They
lot of
really
cases.
do.
Yeah.
And I don't know if I enjoy the word authenticity. I don't know if I like
It was
it.
the word of
Like
the year
it's
last year.
Yeah, it kind of irks me. I'm gonna be honest. Like I use it. I do use it because it is the I don't know. Maybe we just need a different word for it. But I also think that there's like I think we need to work on authentic work, not being and by authentic work, and you said what defines authenticity
Mm-hmm.
and creativity. I think that authenticity is shown when you watch something and you feel something in your heart.
Hmm.
When you like, when you move, like when you
Sure.
listen to music and it moves you,
Right.
when you listen to something or you
Oh,
watch
yes.
somebody and like,
Yes.
I
Yes.
think that is authentic work. That
Right.
is what we need to do. Move people like, and that comes down to like the choices I make in my videos, like I'm very particular about music,
Mm-hmm.
about like the emotional response that people are having to how I was feeling in that moment. It's always correlated together, and I'm very particular about it. So it's like I don't know. That's all I can say about authenticity. But I hate the word.
But that's so true about any form of art. Really, it's like
Yeah.
I just want to feel something. Just make it. It
Yes.
could be a line of a poem. It could be a chorus of a song. It could be, and this, I think is probably why I like so many different genres of music because it doesn't really
Yeah.
matter to me what kind of pigeonhole it's in, as long as
Yeah.
you're making me feel something. It could be like one lyric that just reaches me. I mean, I
Oh,
have
yes.
certain songs that will reach me in such a way that I'm sure you've done this, where you just put it on loop and you just listen to that whole song over and over and over
A hundred
again.
percent.
Yeah.
Sometimes there's a song that defines like my creative self in that moment. I'm like so inspired by it, so I'll listen to it in loop while I'm
Yeah.
painting. Like literally for 3 hours, I'm listening to the same song, but it's just evoking this like emotional response in my body that like it's shaking me to my core, and it's creating this momentum of creative sense of worth on this canvas. And I don't know how else to explain it, but that is so powerful. That is
Right.
authentic work.
I
Another word, I
agree.
can't even say it properly.
Yeah.
That's what we should all be striving for. And whether you are consider yourself a curious person or not, or you have a business and you're not sure how to navigate yourself in this world, then just make people feel how you feel about the thing that you're doing.
That's pretty good advice for any creative person, especially a creative person who wants to get involved in social media and maybe have a go at this
Yeah.
crazy job of ours.
It's so intense. I mean, I always will talk people into sharing their passions because it's just I love when people talk to me about what they're passionate about. I love that light that happens in their eyes.
I do,
I think
yeah.
I've talked a lot of people into starting businesses all the time. Every time I meet somebody new, I'm like, you should start a business about this. And they're like, yeah, I should. And I'm like, yeah, as I pump them up, and like
Yeah.
make people feel inspired to do things like that. But, it is work though. At the end of the day, it is work. And actually, there's one more thing that I'll share from Liz Gilbert, and I'm sorry that I preach her so much, but she is a real powerhouse in my life. I went and saw her live last year, and she did a talk, and boy, did that set the soul on fire. But she talked about if you want to be a person to make it in this space, or to do whatever, whether you're a writer, a painter, a builder, a woodworker, whatever. There's three things that you have to inject into your world. The first one is priorities. So prioritizing the work. So if you want to be a writer, then write. Don't
Right.
don't not write and say you're a writer.
Right.
No, you have
You
to
got to
write.
do it. Do the thing.
Write every day. Set 5 minutes aside, do the writing. The next one is boundaries. Having boundaries in your life. So, you want to be a writer, you want to be a DIY, you want to be an artist, tattooist, whatever. You have to set boundaries and goals for yourself. So if your friends are like, yeah, we're going out this weekend, let's go party. And you're like, you know what? No, I'm not going to go out this weekend because I'm going to work on my art. Like you have to set those boundaries, or, from 2 to 5, I'm going to turn my phone off and not look at anything, and I'm going to do the work. So it's like those boundaries in your life create success. And then the last one was mysticism. So this idea that to be, let's call it a creative person, I put that in quotations again, I think you have to believe in this spiritual idea that creativity is ever flowing, that it's moving, that it is a spiritual thing, that, we talk about this all the time about creative ideas that hit you and inspire you, and then they go to somebody else. And this mysticism around ideas when they hit you, and all of a sudden you're like, oh, I got to go and make this, like make it now, it doesn't have to be perfect, it doesn't have to be polished, because then it's authentic to your moment and that self. I think that there's something so powerful about that. And throw purpose. She said, the idea is like everyone's looking for a purpose in life. And I was like, yeah, like that's what I was there for this talk. I was like, I don't know what my purpose is anymore. Why am I making these videos? I was like driving myself crazy. And she said, throw purpose out the window. Stop looking for purpose. Just do the thing that you want to do. So, just, and if you want to share it, but have your priorities, create your boundaries, and believe in mysticism, believe that you're on the right path, and believe that the path will help you, lead you, inspire you, tear you away, but bring you back. Like you have to believe in that.
I love this idea. I love this idea she puts forth of like ideas are sort of like this universal energy that's kind of like floating around there. And the idea may strike you, but you may not act on it. And then it will try for a little while. But if it doesn't, if you don't act on it, it's moving on to somebody else.
Oh, that happens to me all the time.
But she was like totally embracing that. She was like, yes, okay, great. It wasn't for me at that time. I applaud you, this other person, for taking on this idea, because the idea needed to be realized by somebody. Maybe it just wasn't for me at that time.
It wanted to be made. Right. I love that idea. I love the mysticism around that. Ideas want to be made, and I'm like, yeah, they do want to be made. So, anyways.
Danie, it was great talking to you again. Thanks for joining me.
It's always a joy to talk to you, Steve. I love talking creativity with you.